manual. So let me just make sure that the setup is correct and everybody can see what I'm talking about. Perfect. So the history of React Native CLI. Back in the day, React Native CLI was just a few commands. Let's maybe go to let's go to GitHub so that we can see it for yourself. You can see it for yourself. Wait a second. You know, doing live stream is fun because that's the moment when you feel like you don't know how to code. All right. So back in the day, React Native CLI, let's start with the question why React Native CLI was even created. So the CLI was created to make it, possible for people to bundle their React Native apps. And because React Native wasn't using Webpack, but something that was known as our React Packager, the CLI was there for you to make it possible to bundle the app or start the server if you were doing that in a development mode. So React Native CLI started as a CLI made for the packager to bundle your React Native app. At the very beginning, if we go back to the future, back to the past, let's say 0.11. Like as you can see, the structure was always the same. There was the local CLI folder where the CLI files were located. And it was just a bunch of commands to start packager, to run simulator for both iOS and Android, so that it's a bit more practical than going to Xcode and Android Studio. And that's pretty much it. So the takeaway is that the CLI was designed to make it possible for you to bundle apps. And even though this purpose is still the same, and the purpose of the tools, especially React Native CLI, is to make it possible to bundle your apps, the focus is a bit different. And so since React Native CLI was essentially designed to bundle your React Native apps, there was also a file called run-cli.config.js where you were able to configure your React Native stuff. It's just that probably it wasn't available back then. Okay, we'll get back to this a bit later. So if you were using React Native, let's say when it was 0.35 or 25, if there is anyone on stream out of 5 people, which is pretty nice, that was using React Native back when it was 0.10 or something, let me know. Anyway, if you were using native modules and trying to get some native code, you pretty much had to do a lot of steps manually. These days you don't have to run them because they are abstracted away, but back in the day they were quite needed. So me and Alexei Kurev, we had this idea that this should be easier. Like, I was never really satisfied with the fact that you had to do all the steps yourself, because I believe that installing React Native packages should be as easy as installing any others. Like, there shouldn't be any special treatment, especially if we are trying to market React Native as a way for React developers and developers in general to write cross-platform software. You shouldn't be required to know the tiny little differences here and there in order to actually install a package. So we felt like we should abstract this away, and we created a package called RMPM. So RMPM was React Native Package Manager. The idea was for RMPM to be like NPM, where we could actually have a full surge of packages, have a lot of logic for actually linking these packages. So that was the idea. That was the name. We had a logo, pretty much a lot of stars. Well, the logo is no longer working. Anyway, the idea for RMPM, like the basic idea, the MVP for RMPM was to have 2 commands: install for installing a package and link for linking already installed packages, so that for those of you who were already having an app and didn't want to install a package because you already had them, you were able to run link and just link these packages again manually. So that was the idea. And as you can see in the repo motivation, we just believe that this should be as easy as it is right now, and as it will be in the future. So we created this package. It became very, very popular. We gave a lot of interesting talks about our NPM on conferences, and we started talking with Facebook how we can improve this workflow further. And we back in the day, I believe it was Martin Konitek, that we had a great chat with, and his idea was that we should basically move our NPM back to React Native. So we just did it. And it was the craziest pull request I've ever shipped with Alexei that had like so many changes. And basically the idea of this pull request was to bring install and link command to be next to the existing commands such as run iOS and run Android. So we did that in pretty big pull request. Actually, a bunch of them follow-ups because that was a lot of work. So let's check. The first pull request, probably this will be, oh my god, this feels like time traveling. Actually never checked these pull requests before. Oh, there we go. Merge RNPM into React Native. So all I did was I just copied and pasted files, and then the idea was that I'll just do something with that as a follow-up. So this merge had its benefits and disadvantages. So one of the benefits was obviously that the RNPM experience was available for everybody right away. So you no longer had to install RNPM globally, you just had to run React Native link and the comments were just there. Problem is the features and the, let's say, focus on the CLI just got, there was just too many features of React Native, too many issues, pull requests, for our small team to actually focus on our NPM. So what happened as a result is that I had some follow-up action items that I wanted to do, and I've never done them. So I was feeling really bad about that. But what happened is that the link, the install command on our NPM itself ended up coexisting with React Native CLI without a clear way of going forward. Community, which is great, was fixing bugs and adding features, but we just couldn't spend enough time and focus in order to get through that hard amount of code and essentially just split these things, because what we ended up with was RNPM and React Native CLI living together, which was very confusing. The reason it was confusing, and it is confusing till this day, is that in order to configure React Native CLI, you can create rncli config.js, and you probably recognize this file. If you were doing any custom setup, you must have set it up before. And on the other hand, there is also rnpm config that you can use for configuring the rnpm part of the CLI. So many people often ask me, which one should I set up? Right? It's not that clear, and it gets even more confusing because rncli config.js is now metro config. So you probably don't have any idea what I'm just talking about, so maybe let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'll show you the free configs and how they are used, and then you will know, then you probably will recognize some of them, and then you will know, what's up with these things and why they are confusing. So the config was one of the problems. The config was one of the problems that I always wanted to fix, and there were also a bunch of other things that we wanted to fix, and we never did them. So the reason I'm super excited these days is that all these action items have been just implemented as a part of the link core movement. So what happened is me, my friend Mike, and my friend Kacper, SMS on Twitter, we got together, and I believe they are also on this live stream, which is pretty fun. So we got together and we had this idea that, hey, this is our opportunity to make these things implemented and make CLI great again. So I was like, why don't we do it? And we just did it. So moving to the second point in our agenda, which is the linker movement. Like, if you are in the React Native community, you probably heard of it. But just a quick recap, the linker effort is the process of extracting out React Native packages to separate repositories so that they can have better maintenance, more focus on the community, etc., etc. And there are people questioning this idea. There are people that are like, like, this is actually bad for the community because we are leaving the packages for the community to maintain. This is less secure and it's basically lowering the quality of our ecosystem. However, I want you to think of the React Native CLI as a example how linker can be effective if it's used, in the right way, to actually implement long-standing issues. So all these packages are located inside the React Native community group. And the React Native community is basically your hub for everything that happens inside React Native right now. If you feel like you can't just keep up with Twitter and you don't know where to check for React Native news, this is the place you should be following if you want to be up to date. And pretty much that's it. Apart from, a bunch of projects you can see here, like React Native Camera, CLI, NetInfo, and plenty of others. There is also releases repository where we are tracking updates of the releases. And you probably know this one already, but if not, this is a place where me and community are tracking, the progress of the upcoming release. So you can essentially go to any issue you want. You can suggest commits to be cherry picked, and then somebody from the community, me, Lorenzo, or somebody else who's in charge of this particular release, will come answer your concerns, and we will most likely cherry pick your requested changes. So this is a pretty great way to be a part of React Native lifecycle. And if you want to have your contribution, this is where you can do it. So again, React Native community is a great place where all these linker repositories are living, and plenty of other great things too. So as I said, we extracted CLI out of the React Native repo, and it became a standalone package as of React Native 0.59. So as of React Native 0.59, as soon as you run React Native, you are not running the CLI that used to be inside React Native repo, but instead you're running this project that you can see now on screen, which is the result of our hard work and the community, with more than 100 pull requests in like 2 months. All right. So I'm hoping that I'm not really boring. If you are looking for some live coding, please bear with me for another few minutes where we will actually do a pull request. So let's check what's next on the agenda. New features landed. So thanks to moving React Native CLI out of the repo, we got this beautiful opportunity to contribute more. And I feel like the reason for that is that the separate package gives us the this kind of relation. We feel like this is our part of the React Native ecosystem. We feel like we need to do it. We want to do it. We feel like we want to make it great, and that could explain the reason behind all the great contributions that are happening right now there. So just to recap, out of all the releases, I think that the one that most people heard about is was the performance optimizations. We actually wrote about it on our CallStack blog, so I'll do a quick self promo of the company that makes it all possible. And yeah, like the biggest changes were for example, the performance, it dropped from 2.5 seconds to 0.2. And this sounds trivial, but can you imagine, I believe that people like a few months from now will be wondering how it was even possible to run the CLI for 2.5 seconds. Like, this was madness. So I'm really happy that this is gone. And it surprisingly didn't take much time, but it was possible because we moved it out of the React Native repo and we were no longer coupled with the React Native infrastructure. Another one was the CF bundle identifier, and you probably have seen that before. That's the default default error that you were getting in case anything was broken during the React Native run iOS command. So pretty much, I have no idea what it means. It had like the issue CF bundle identifier in React Native repo had like hundreds of comments, and essentially they were all like almost impossible to debug because like this was hiding the real error message. So I wouldn't recommend. Like, I was not really happy with that. I'm really happy that this is gone. Like, more than 100 issues that were sort of covering valid problems, and we were never able to actually tell the what was wrong with them. And by the way, thank you guys for interacting. Problem is, I feel like the live stream is like at least 1 minute behind what I'm really talking about. So when I see you saying yeah, right, or it was, I'm like, what I said, but it's all right. It's all right. Cool. So, you know, I could speak about features we did and stuff like that for a really really long time, but I'm not gonna do it today. You will hear about them anyway. So let me get to the main part, which is I want to tell you a bit more about this configuration problem. I briefly mentioned it before, and I promised to show you real examples of configuration. So what I want you to show today is how it used to be, where is the pull request that changes it, what are the changes, and we will try to do a pull request to React Native repo. I'm hoping we will make it. With React Native repo, there is always this this possibility that something will blow up because of many different tools that need to play together, and every time I'm doing any live coding it happens, so we'll see. So yeah, let's get started. I mentioned this config. There are 3 ways actually to configure React Native CLI. And if you are wondering right now, what does it mean to configure React Native CLI? You are not the only one. I'm also wondering that, and that's why it's confusing. So there is this file, React Native CLI config.js here. So let's get into it. And right now it doesn't have a lot of things inside. And the first time I saw it, I started wondering, like, what does it really mean? Like, get polyfills or extra node modules, that doesn't really mean anything to me. Like, this is definitely not a CLI config, right? Like, the CLI is all about commands, so this is not a CLI config, even though it's named like that. So I started digging, and it turns out this is an alias for Metro config. So these properties are not configuring the CLI, they are configuring Metro packager. So the get polyfills or extra node modules are some additional things that need to be set up for Metro in order to run React Native from source. So I started thinking about it, and what I did is I got to the Metro repository. One of the packages is Metro core config, and there is this load config.js method, and I've realized the RNCLI config is there. Like, it's one of the aliases for their configuration. So it's not a React Native CLI config, even though it's named like that. It's a Metro config. Problem is, CLI is also using this file. So you know where we are getting. It's like Metro is using some of these properties, and it's loading the entire file with Cosmic config. It's merging it with their defaults, and at the same time we define some properties ourselves for the CLI. So what we have is we have 2 things coexisting in a single place, which is really bad, and it makes it really confusing for a CLI to work with. And the reason for that is when I was merging RNPM and I saw Rn CLI, I was like, this is the way to configure React Native. Turns out it was not. So I merged my config into config that was meant for Metro, and that became confusing. Even after Metro was pulled out of React Native, that config became even more confusing. But at the same time, RNPM, back when RNPM was a separate package, it had its own configuration. So it was obvious that we should support that too. So what we did is we didn't change that. We still allowed packages to load RNPM configuration to change the behavior of the React Native CLI tools too. So a perfect example of that is the React Native Windows. And actually, React Native Windows is not the only one. Almost like every package that wants to change the linking behavior must do the RNPM configuration. The reason for that is, like, as I said at the beginning, I've never finished config migration. I just bridged the RNPM config, and I've never, did the follow-up to sort this out for 3 years. So as much as this is discouraging for everybody, and including me, it's also very, very encouraging on the other hand, because now that I finally did it, I feel like, all these to-do lists that were, delayed are slowly getting done. So that's pretty nice. So this RNPM thing is here, and problem is this is not documented at all. The RNPM configuration was made to change behavior of link. So for example, when link wouldn't work, you were able to change some of its settings. When it can happen? So the native modules can be structured in any way you want. So there can be, like for example, let's take this React Native Windows. This is a React Native plugin, right? It doesn't have a native module, but it's a whole platform. Anyway, the same paradigms apply. And it has this RNWCS folder. And inside it has a bunch of other folders, right? And if we go to React Native community, let's go to any other package that has some native code like camera roll, we'll see the structure is different. It has the iOS, Android, and a bunch of other folders. So the problem with React Native Link that we had to solve was you can't really know what's the structure gonna be, and we wanted it to implement all the use cases. So we decided to implement the configuration mechanism that will analyze your file structure and will sort of tell the CLI where the files are based on that information. But of course, as every heuristic, this one can also be wrong sometimes, and that's why this RNPM field on the package JSON was created to sort of change some of its defaults. And obviously, like providing platform support was never the common use case, right? Because not every package exposes additional platform. So that's why this config has been created. So in a typical React Native project, you would have RNPM config, which is the one that I'm showing you, to change the linking appearance. Let's say some assets or something's not working. You'd have the RNCLI config to change some of the React Native configuration, for example, package or root. And yep, so you'd have two configurations essentially, and maybe Metro config.js if you are migrating and are kind of stuck in between. So that wasn't really a good idea from the design perspective. I feel like now that I look at this code from 3 years perspective, it's like I feel like I was dumb when I was doing that 3 years ago, and I'm still surprised people in the React Native community let me do it because CLI is something people were using everywhere, and I think Link has been used by everyone using React Native at least once. So this is a lot of impact and a lot of responsibility on a pretty young developer without a lot of experience back in the day. So we had two configurations, and if you are looking at this config and you feel like it looks bad, you are right. For example, like what's the plugin, what's the platform, like these things are not really like don't tell much, but they are cool because the plugin property. Let's say it points to the local CLI index folder. So let's go and check what's inside. There is an array of 2 commands. So the plugin property lets you extend React Native CLI with additional commands. So for example, if it's a React Native Windows platform and you add it to your dev dependencies and you run React Native help, you'll see run Windows and run WPF available inside your help section. So plugins and commands can dynamically extend React Native CLI capabilities with their proprietary commands. So this is useful for things like additional platforms or working on a large scale, app where maybe your org has some special requirements and you don't want to use run iOS, maybe you want a different one, stuff like that. It's cool, but it's terribly named. It's not a plugin, it should be commands, right? So we had this idea recently that we should change it. And the trigger for me to change it was the upcoming auto-linking feature that we are working on with the team. What's auto-linking? So auto-linking is a new way to link your packages. You can think of it as a React Native Link 2.0. How's the workflow right now? Maybe I can try showing you the workflow, right? So the workflow right now, if you want to, let's actually create a barebone React Native project, or maybe not. It's good that this repo is full of to-do list and hello world labs, and no secret project has been just revealed, so that's good. So we are in a React Native project, so everything should work. Right, we got a list of commands. Actually, you can see there is run Windows at the end because I'm actually, what I'm doing is I'm running I'm running inside a folder that already happens to have React Native Windows inside its dependencies. So I was testing some platform support and I just had it. Right. So right now, if you want to add a third-party package, let's say this camera roll, I hope it's actually released. Yes, you have to run yarn add React Native. Actually, you can do React Native install React Native community, React Native camera roll. So didn't find a package. Good. So as I said, it is either not released or I have a typo in the name. Let's see. Oh, I should probably talk to you. So obviously without camera roll again. Why would you repeat React Native in the name twice? This is such a waste of bytes. Camera roll. All right, so this should install a React Native camera roll package and make it available for us to use. If I run the div, do I see? Right. So the workflow is you need to run the React Native install or npm install and React Native link. What does it do? It installs your package as a node dependency, so it adds the dependency to package JSON. It also downloads the dependency to node modules, and then it performs some operations on your project files. So if we go and see git diff, we'll see that we added a bunch of things to your Gradle files, which are for the Android. We also added the new camera roll package to the Java main application, and a bunch of other things for iOS. So what we did is we have modified your project in order to support a third-party dependency. And this is really bad. This is really bad because, well, the biggest problem with Link right now, as it is that it doesn't support native dependencies. So when you are trying to install a package, for example, a Facebook FB ads or something like that, or any other package that depends on some native SDKs. Oh my god, wait a second. It's bad because you can see it. Is there the do not disturb somewhere? Whatever. This is bad. Okay, probably I can't see it on this one. Cool. All right. Sorry for that. I got the do not disturb mode on. So, okay, back to the disadvantages of that. The biggest problem, there are a few. One of them is that we don't support native dependencies on iOS. We modify your project files. So this is bad because it produces merge conflicts, and it's not easy to upgrade your project because this is now no longer a stock React Xcode project. It's now a project with some different things added on top of it. And it's also very brittle because, it's not really supported to do things like that. And why? I can't show it. I can't show you that on my laptop because this logic is already gone. Actually, it's not. So yay, let's open VS Code and get this stuff done. So let me open the React Native CLI and I'll show you what's going on here. I actually lost my roadmap, but I think we'll survive. Right, I was doing some work in progress in the meantime, so let me close that stuff. So the reason this is not good is if we go to, maybe it's better if you see me again. So the reason this is not good is when we go to CLI. Oh, this is new code, so platform iOS source config. So this is not good because in order to link a project to your Xcode files, to your iOS project or Android dependency to your Android project, we need to perform a lot of hacks in order to get that working. For example, on iOS, we are parsing your project into an object tree structure, and we are performing some proprietary logic inside. So what we are doing is, for example, we are adding project to a libraries. So we go to libraries property inside your object, to its children, and we push another children. And what's the libraries key? That's the libraries folder that you see inside your Xcode project. Right, when you go to Xcode, you have on the left panel, you have groups, and these groups are containers for different file references. So what we are doing here, for example, is we are pushing if we are linking the camera roll, we're gonna push the RCT camera roll Xcode project to your groups container, to your libraries container. So this is kind of good and kind of bad on the other hand because it's not supported, and this is not how it should be done. The reason we did it is that there was nothing better at the time, and RNPM was just meant to automate things that you would have done yourself other way. So since you would normally drag and drop your project to libraries group, we decided to do the same, right? It seems like a valid use case. And it's like on iOS it's not that bad, but on Android there is no object-like structure. There is no Xcode project. Actually, we have Gradle files, and there is no Gradle parser available for JavaScript. So we ended up doing a bunch of regexes here and there, and nobody's a regex master, and getting this stuff to work is like super complex. So we basically search for things like find for example, this is not here, register native module. Yeah, so for example, we apply these patches. So in your settings Gradle path, this is the path that we discover by applying some heuristics. And if we don't, you can provide the rnpm config for that. So we apply a settings patch, which basically means that at the end of the file, we will add this include and project lines. So this is what you would normally do, right? And for this file, this might work, may not. If you change some spacing, it's okay. In this case, we rely on the end of the file, so this is pretty easy. However, there are some things like find the main React package in your main application. And what if you don't have it? What if it's different name? You know, things like that. Then this will not work. So it's not bulletproof. It has its own limitations, and you know, going forward, this is not how it should be done. It obviously works, and we have plans to keep maintaining that in the future, but it's not something that's gonna last forever. And if we are thinking of React Native as a stable stuff, this is something that isn't gonna last. Stepping for a second to the chat, Damian, answering your question, yes, that's the idea. I'll talk about auto-linking in a second too again, but the idea is that auto-linking should cover all the use cases. And thanks Vertigo and Josh for your kind words. It's super excited too. If there is anything that's not clear or you feel like you want me to cover once again, just let me know. It's a live stream, so I haven't prepared like too much, just going with the flow and seeing where it gets us. And I also have my friends from the CLI team on the chat too as moderators and my helpers. So if there is anything that interests you, just feel free to ask. All right. So I'm not gonna be talking at all about this this current way of linking. This is something that's gonna be changed anyway. So there are two things that I wanted to chat about before I'll do my small PR. So the first thing I wanted to chat about is the auto-linking. And yes, the idea for auto-linking is to be shipped with 0.60, but it's not going as fast as we would like it. And it's, we've been thinking inside React Native team how to approach releases, and we feel like every release should have something big. So even if things fail, or even if things don't work for you, or you encounter some breaking changes, there will be something exciting that will make you want to upgrade. So the latest release has had hooks, and I think that was pretty big, and a bunch of other improvements. But I remember hooks as a first thing, like this is what comes to my mind. And this one is meant to have the auto-linking, but if we won't make it till end of next week, we'll probably ship without it, because there is a bunch of other stuff that's already waiting for the release. So even if it's without auto-linking, don't worry, it's going to be awesome anyway. So speaking of auto-linking, there are two things that you might consider checking. Like, let's start with the reason why the idea of auto-linking has been even born. The idea of auto-linking has been born in majority, like the concept for auto-linking has been invented by Expo team, and the idea for auto-linking was something that we've been thinking inside React Native team for a while. So if you want to have some context onto what this what the motivation for auto linking was. There is a closed issue called native modules, and this is the umbrella issue that I've created January 28th, and it tries to tackle the problem of native modules. So it talks about what CLI is, what is link, what it's not, basically what I just told you about, and it says why linking is hard and what are the other limitations like lack of support for native dependencies. And then it has some ideas like what we should do to make it great, what we should do to make your experience writing React Native and developing React Native libraries awesome. And one of these ideas is the whole new linking experience. And that's the idea is that you just run React Native install without thinking about anything. Like this is automatic. You can also do npm install and you will have no problems running React Native project. So the auto linking is big, but this is just the part of bigger scope of features. So once we are done with that, there will be a bunch of other crazy stuff coming, and I'm really excited for that too. If you have also any ideas how we could, improve our experience, let me know, and I invite you to join us in React Native CLI team. We are happy to help you get on board up to speed, and it's a really nice project where we can have impact on a lot of developers and the way we all write React Native apps. So auto linking. At the end of this very long discussion, no, Christoph, I don't have a list of actionable things that we should do right now. I mean, I do, but this is not the time when I'm gonna answer you. But oh, it didn't link. Okay, there is this umbrella issue in React Native CLI that I just created, preparing for the live stream, where I'm tracking the progress. So. Long story short, the auto linking work is split into 4 pull requests. 2 of them are already merged, the other 2 are waiting to be merged. The team that works on the auto linking can be divided into 3 parts: the JavaScript one, which is me, the iOS one, which is Orta and Aloy from Cocapods. Both work at Artsy and are doing great contributions. And they are also creators of Cocapods, so that's really exciting that we're gonna get some first class support from the team, especially because it's Ruby, and when I heard I'm gonna be coding Ruby, I was already scared, so that's pretty cool. And on the Android side of things, we have we have Salakar and we have Bartol Caruza, so 2 great friends from React Native community too that are doing great job, making Android up to speed, and they are doing the Android part. And by the way, Salakar is doing a lot of live streaming too. In particular, he's live streaming when he is coding auto linking. So if you are interested more into like how the Android side of things is getting into live, you can follow him on Twitter. I bet he is gonna live stream something soon too. So the auto linking can be split into 3 parts. How can I explain that in the easiest way? So obviously, with auto linking, we need iOS code and we need Android code. And the reason there is JavaScript part in between is that JavaScript is going to be the source of truth. So in order to make this auto linking as smooth and bulletproof as possible, we are going to provide JSON object for iOS and Android to use from the CLI. And this is great because, as I said previously, we already have config for the RMPM, right? We already know where your native files are, what are the native dependencies you have, based on your node modules, dependencies, and the files they have inside. The configuration, the heuristics are pretty good. It's just that the actions are bad. The linking itself is bad, but the config that it uses is good. So we are not getting rid of config. We are leaving config where it is, but we are changing the actions, the JavaScript linking, to be native linking. So that's why there is this JavaScript part, and why I'll show you in a second. So the Android and iOS parts are pretty cool. The iOS part is based on CocoaPods, and the way it works is you just, oh please, do you have an example here? So the idea is that you add, let's go to a pod file somewhere, or maybe in this, maybe I can find an issue here where we have first-hand example how to use it. Awesome, that's right. So that's the idea. The idea is that you should be able to have a pod file like that with React, and the built-in React modules that you want to use, and then at the end you would provide this use auto pods, and that's it. You just run pod install, and use auto pods would automatically take the config, and it will tell CocoaPods, okay, here are the pod files that I found inside node modules, link them. And great thing about that is that we will be getting rid of all the custom hacks that we have for linking, in favor of just telling CocoaPods, hey, this is the array of pod files that we have found in node modules, do your thing, which means supporting assets, different targets, linking for tvOS, not linking for tvOS. This will all be supported just like that because we use CocoaPods, which is great because this setup has been already proven to work at a scale for a lot of companies. So obviously you require the autopods function from your node modules. This is a temporary path. Obviously the real path is going to be different, but the idea is that the Ruby function is all you need. So for example, you will be able to provide some arguments to this function too. So if, for example, you want to exclude something, or say you have many different targets and you want to be like, okay, just link for target A, and then you copy this function once again and you link for target B, like pretty customizable, and you can move this function around. So right now with link support for CocoaPods, we rely on some commands inside a file. With this approach, like, we don't really care where you put this, as long as it's there. Pod install is all you need in order to get up to speed. We are hoping to change that. We are thinking of changing that in the future so that you don't have to run a pod install. Maybe we can run pod install during the run step of Xcode itself, which is interesting opportunity for us to explore. It's just that it's not a typical thing native developers would do. So the CocoaPods team had to think whether, there are some use cases where this might be bad. So they are on it, and they're gonna check, whether this is good or not. So this is the iOS part of things. It's pretty much still in development, so if you have any questions, just feel free to ask, and I'll try to pass them to the CocoaPods team, and then we will try to answer them. And the Android part is even more exciting because it has some pretty cool features. The integration point is kind of the same. You have to sort of execute a function inside your build Gradle. We will ship that with the default template of React Native, so if everything goes well, you shouldn't have to do that yourself, but in case you want to upgrade your current project, you may find this useful. And great thing is that we will auto-generate a package list for you. So you will no longer have to do the return new whatever package, stuff like that. This will be automatic. So it's pretty big, right? Like you just install it and you don't have to go to this file and add this thing. It's pretty nice because it happens. It's done automatically behind the scenes, and all you have to do is just install it and run Gradle, and the list of classes will be generated. So it's pretty awesome. And another big thing that we are working on for Gradle is that we will stop copying and pasting your assets. So what we will do from the next release of React Native is that instead of copying and pasting assets, we will reference them just like we do on iOS. So this is going to be one of the missing blocks in order to bring React Native CLI Android side of things on parity with iOS side of things. So pretty nice. A lot of interesting changes happening. I'm hoping to talk more about Android and iOS side of things at the next live stream because they are not done yet. So there is not really a lot to talk about. I don't want to tell you things that will change rather than the high level description, because this might be confusing, especially for those of you who are not involved in the development. When things change, this might be a bit confusing. But there is one thing that is already merged and it's already released, and I'm really excited to tell you about it because we just merged it like yesterday, and it's what I've been working on for the past 2 weeks, and it's the it's something that is going to make Link possible. And answering one of the questions that I see in the chat box, this will not have any changes to the way you create native modules and require any patterns, except for the fact that you need to use Gradle for Android, which you already do, but the location is irrelevant. And for iOS side of things, you will have to include a pod file. So regardless of whether you use native modules or not, a native code inside your native module, you need a pod file, otherwise we'll not link it. And now you might be wondering, like actually this is why I'm excited, because it's a gradual feature that is totally backwards compatible and it's not going to make you any problems. So let me show you what we just shipped. Yeah, switching to VS Code. I'm going to be gone for a while now and you will be able to see the screen. So let's go to this async storage repo package, and let me run a CLI command. So I'm going to run CLI with this awkward command because I have CLI shaped locally here. And it's broken, which is nice. I should probably check if I'm running. I'm not on master, so that's why. I'm just shipping other stuff and building features, so it's obviously broken. Right now it should work. Yay, it works. All right, so one thing that I did recently to make the auto linking available on both platforms is the config command. So when you run config command like this, you will see JSON, and this JSON describes everything that happens inside your project, everything. So this is the config that you never seen because it's been used in behind the scenes inside CLI. This is what current Link is using to link your things. So it knows, that's why Link knows that you have async storage because it's in this object. It knows, where is the Xcode project of the App Center if you have App Center installed. So this is the config that powers the Link right now. So we felt like, why don't we do a command for config to print it, and then auto-linking on iOS and Android, this Ruby function and Gradle and Groovy function can execute this command, get this config from JavaScript, and use it to do the linking. So this command makes it possible and actually made the work on Android and iOS possible to start. And if you look at it, the structure of it is pretty neat. It has a map of dependencies where key is the name of a dependency that you have, and inside you have config for each of the dependencies, an array of some assets, hooks, params, and whatever. And it's pretty cool because you can override it at any point in time. So one of the common requests that I've seen during issue triaging as far as React Native Link was that, like, React Native Link is cool, you know, stuff like that, but there is one problem. I don't want to link this on Android, or I don't want to link this on iOS, or I just want to link assets and I don't want anything else, right? So there was a common request and not a really a clear solution to that problem. So we felt like this is perfect opportunity to change it. And I was like, okay, if we are going this auto-linking path and we essentially take take everything from you, so you can't change the way we link your native modules, right? This happens automatically, so you can't disable it. With current link, you can delete a package from your Xcode and be like, it's gone, right? But with a auto linking, you can't do it. So I knew that this is going to be even bigger problem. So what I thought about is, okay, if we standardized config into a object that has a defined structure, then we can do fun stuff with that. So let's take a look at this config. For example, what do we got here? We have let's start from the end. For example, let's see. We have a React Native async storage, right? I just added it before. So we have this async storage installed. We have a key platforms, and inside we have config for iOS, because obviously async storage has iOS files. It also has Android files. But for Windows, it doesn't. I also have React Native Windows here, just in case you are thinking, where is this Windows coming from? So, and it has empty assets, array of assets. So let's say that we want to change something from here. Like, you don't want to link, when you run React Native link, you don't want async storage to be linked on iOS. You just don't. What can we do? We can override it, which is something that we can't do right now. So how to override it? I'm going to open a config inside this folder. Let me see if it's there. It's not there. So I'm going to open a new project, and I'm back inside async storage repro folder. So I'm gonna create a new file, and I'm gonna name this file React Native config.js. So it's not a RNCLI, it's not Metro, RNPM, you know, all these confusing things. It's React Native. It's a config for React Native, so let's just name it React Native config, right? No more confusing names in this project. And this is, by the way, a shout out to Christopher Poyer for being our, let's say, policeman for good names. He's the one that tells me don't name things utilities and tools, be more descriptive. So I really took that advice to heart. All right, so let's override async storage. Do you remember the structure? It was dependencies, the name of the package, so React Native community, async storage, platforms, iOS, null. I have no idea if this works, but it should be deep merged and it should make the iOS null. If it doesn't, then we have a bug to fix during this live stream, which I'm really hoping we don't do. So again, I'm running this CLI for this awkward method, but in your case, you should be able to just do it normally. Oh my god, I'm always making this typo. Works. So I almost had a heart attack during the first time I ran. I was like, oh my god, again. But it's good, it's good, it's good. Tests are passing, so this should work. And see, it's null. There is no iOS dependency for async storage? No, it's there. It's just that we override it. And now we are thinking, okay, Mike, this is cool feature, but it's auto-linking. I want it now. The good news is this config, this React Native config command is also going to power the current React Native link. So all the ways to link, the current one, the auto-linking, maybe a new one in the future, are gonna use this config. So you can forget this rnpm package JSON thing. Just set this, and no matter what you are running, no matter whether it's React Native link or auto-linking, this is going to be respected. And to test that, let's comment it out, because I think async storage is already linked. So let's unlink it. Async storage. We unlinked it. Now we're gonna see it unlinked the iOS dependency, so it was there. Now we're gonna nullify the iOS dependency. And let's change unlink to link. And it just did the Android one. So it's that easy now to just disable it entirely. Or you don't have to, can be an object, and maybe you want to change a source dir. Let's say our algorithm is not perfect, we did a mistake. Now you don't have to open a PR and be like, things not work. You can just change it, ship it, and it's done. And you can also define a bunch of other stuff. You can define your project assets here. If you have some local commands that you want to expose when you run React Native command, you can also do it via the commands array. So I can do something like function. Let's just do an empty function, name, test. I'm not sure if that's a valid structure, but should be just enough. Yep, it's not on master yet, but I'm going to change that really soon from strings to be an object. So let's forget about this one during the demo now. Either way, as you can see, we have some validation. Sometimes it is a bit cryptic because of the amount of messages that can be printed by Joy, but some of them are already nicely translated. So if you see anything, hard in particular, just let me know. So I'm gonna probably remove this config because tomorrow I'll go to work and on Monday I'll try to repro some issues with async storage and I'll be like, where is the iOS dependency? So I just removed that for my future self. Yeah, I know. Actually, a better solution for typos than the spell checker is getting rid of MacBook, which has this really bad keyboard that is just losing some things. All right. So two more things before we turn this live stream off. It's Saturday 9 p.m. and I actually gotta run for a birthday party of my friend from Colstack. So I hope he don't mind, but the live stream was more important to do, and I felt like if I'm not gonna do it today, then I'm never gonna do it, and I've been waiting for that for so long. So I did the config and I shipped it, and you can see it. Long story short, it's an object with some properties that you can override. So the default one that we create with RMP with the CLI, we deep merge with the one you provide. So just print the one you have, just print the one from the config command and see it, and you can change any of the properties you want, and it's that easy. There is other feature that we did, which is related to the way we support third-party platforms. Now, I'm not gonna be going too much into details why it's awesome, because that's probably an hour of talking for another live stream. But the long story short is that React Native has always been iOS and Android, and the other platforms such as Windows were sort of left behind, right? They had to integrate with the with React Native through some nasty settings that were not always supported. For example, this RMPM thing, right? Like React Native doesn't have to do it. So it was this disparity between Windows and the React Native that made things confusing, and even we inside CLI were historically creating features with iOS and Android in mind, leaving Windows behind. And I felt like this is not how it should be, because going forward we want React Native to have as many platforms as it can have, having the same level of quality and support. So the good news is that we just also shipped inside a CLI a pull request that treats iOS and Android platforms as out of tree platforms too. So now inside CLI there is nothing that is coupled with iOS and Android. So React Native now can use this configuration format to actually provide, just like Windows provides link config, just like Windows provides run Windows and run WPF, React Native is now going to provide React Native run iOS, run Android, log iOS, log Android, and a bunch of other commands. So great thing about that is that if you don't have React Native in the future, or if you don't target iOS or Android, you will not have these comments. And every abstraction that we need to do from now on has to support multiple platforms at the same time. So that's great. I'm really hoping that next step will be to get Metro at this extracted from the CLI 2, so that we can have Windows and our project called Whole to be treated same way. So we have shipped that too, and we got a bunch of other pull requests lining up as well for shipping. So in particular, there is this I have 2 pull requests to ship myself, and I'll be live streaming that tomorrow, and tomorrow I'll be doing more of the live coding rather than talking. This one is more to give you an idea, where we are, what we are going to do, and stuff like that. So I believe we can get to the last point, which is making a pull request to React Native that will fix a RN tester issue with the latest CLI. And T Mikey was so helpful that he actually released everything for me before the live stream, so I don't have to learn a setup with you, because that would be pretty, let's say, brave from me to do. So now that we have the packages released, what I can do is I can go to React Native, update that, send pull request, and go home. You can go home or get back to work too, and you can also ask me any questions regarding the pull request submission process to React Native. So let's get started. All right, I'm gonna be quick with this one. React Native. Already got that one. This is my temporary terminal. I'm still yet to configure it, so if you have any ideas for me, how to do it, what to do, let me know. So I'm going to pull the latest master from React Native. That should give me some stuff to work on. I'm going to go to a new branch, fit upgrade CLI. Yep. Now what I can do is I can go back to VS Code. That should be hidden somewhere here. And I'm gonna switch to React Native. And what we want to do is we want to create a pull request with the changes. So first thing we're gonna do is we are going to go to package.json and we are going to update the CLI to alpha 0.4, which is the latest version of the CLI we want to use. So now that I have it, I'm going to install CLI with Is there a mistake in the name? All right. So my machine is burning in the meantime as we install node modules. One thing that I've learned while doing React Native contributions is patience, you know, like especially while I'm doing a release, it can sometimes take a bit of time. All right, so we got the alpha 0.4, and as I just told you, the bigger feature, the one of the biggest features of the upcoming 2.0 release of CLI is the config format. And the reason I want to create a config is I want to get rid of a flag that we pass around everywhere. If you look at the start script here, we pass this React Native path. Why we do it? Well, CLI by default looks for React Native in your node modules, but since we are running React Native from source, there is no React Native in your node modules. So we need to tell it where to look for it, and it just happens to be in the current working directory. Problem is, passing this flag around is complex. People often forget about it, and turns out you can't pass it in every single place we call the CLI. So people are having issues running run tester when they're trying to test React Native. So let's make this experience for them much easier. So what we could do here is we can move this React Native path to our React Native config. So I'm going to create a new file, call it React Native config.js, and I'm going to export this React Native path from here. Some hooks madness happening here. All right, and maybe it's obvious that it's a config for command. As you can see, I'm not touching the rncli config. I can actually rename it to be Metro because this is confusing, as you know, it's super confusing. Shouldn't be React Native CLI. I should probably copy the copyrights header. It's very important. Still complaining. Whatever. Yeah, I don't have time to figure out the flow not working. Alright, now that we have this, we can look for all the places where I pass this flag around and remove it. So one of the files is the CI file where we bundle JavaScript for the end-to-end test, so get rid of that one. Another one from instrumentation tests, when we bundle sources for testing. This one is from the package.json start. This one we leave. Extra packager args remove entirely. No trailing comma. Here we also remove extra packager arg. It's interesting. Ah, see, I almost removed not much. Should start like this. Alright, and I have no idea what this project root is. I'm gonna leave it. This might be actually a metro flag. Great. And the biggest benefit of this config for running Run tester and other React Native things is that, like right now, React Native CLI doesn't support running Run tester at all. If you want to run Run tester, you have to go to README, and there is running on iOS, open Xcode project. On Android, you need to run this Gradle command, so it's not really that nice. We could do better. But CLI doesn't support React Native because our recognition system is unable to locate a project to run. So now that we have this config, we can easily do it, and I'm gonna do it in the next PR when it's ready. Right now it's not ready yet, but I'll show you that it can be done quite easily. So now that we got this, I should be able to run npm start, and it started without issues. I mean, it has some other problems, but we can fix that later. I mean, this is not essentially, actually it is related to CLI, because it cannot find the just haste implementation, which is, I know why. Can it be that they removed it? Or either they removed just folder from React Native, or I have an issue with the logic. No, there is just here haste implementation. Alright, anyway, this logic will not change much, so we can do it like this. Count, remove React Native path, and maybe different. Use React Native path from static config. And we're gonna ship this. Obviously it's broken, so I'm not expecting this to run properly. As you can see, it failed with a error. The error is that it can't find just haste implementation, which is good on one hand because it gives me an idea where the error could be coming from. So no more changes to React Native. We can switch to React Native CLI and try to debug this problem, and that's gonna be fun. So let's jump to React Native CLI. Let's set up a build pipeline here. Now we're gonna go to React Native and run npm start. We got the issue, so let's make our way through this code and let's fix it. So the issue is, because I know it because I did this regression most likely. The issue is because of this logic here inside the metro config. So metro config, the load metro config JS file is actually the file where we load the just haste implementation, where we actually resolve a path to it. That should be React Native path. Okay, I know. So we need to resolve it before we pass it. It's probably a dot, and a dot is not gonna work because. So this is actually interesting use case. I'm not sure if we should support it. If this should be relative or absolute, because I'm pretty sure that if I do React Native config and I do a dir name, yep, that works. So the problem is the path has to be static, or yeah. So let's fix it because I don't like this. Dot should be just enough. So let's go to read config. Let's go to index. Index config / index.js is the file where we actually resolve all those things. And the default value for React Native path is user config React Native path or the automatically detected one. So in this case, the problem is here. We probably need to do resolve. From, and from is the project root. Oh, because of null of undefined. All right, so easy. Right. And this is not working. The best will be probably to just debug the context. And how to debug config? We can run I know why it's not working, because npm start actually runs the CLI from node modules, so I still need to run it using this awkward way. Index start. It works. All right, so we have our fix. So let's make it fix resolve relative paths. And that's why I really like this new config, because it's very explicit, you know, where the things are happening. It's not that we are getting path to React Native from some hard-coded place. We actually do have a nice way for telling where the React Native files are located. So I'm gonna open a new PR. Fix resolve relative paths for React Native path. Sorry, I gotta. And what's up with this one? React path to React Native can also be relative. In that case, we should always resolve so that it works. Test plan, setting React Native path to dot works in React Native source. And hopefully T Mikey, who said he has to go, is not really gone and can review it and can merge it. But it was as easy as that, just changing one line where we actually get the React Native path. And by the way, it's in a getter, so this is lazy. We are not gonna execute this code when you don't access it, so it's pretty cool. So now let's go to a React Native repo, and we're gonna open up this PR. Fit. It's actually, I'm not sure what's the type of this PR, whether it's a neat or not. our core, upgrade React Native CLI to Alpha 4. Upgrade React Native to latest CLI to latest version that has a nice configuration interface so that we can avoid passing React Native path all the time. This fixes React Native packager not starting when run Android for RM tester. Actually, it's Metro. Gotta learn. It's irrelevant. And it's VIP work in progress. This is need to release 2.0 alpha 5 and then update again. There's a tiny, you know, let's create this pull request, and in order to make it green, let's actually temporarily change this one to dir name, and I can do the dot at some point later in the future. So this should hopefully work. And now that we are at it, maybe I can also show you the pull request where this is coming from. So I added this React Native 19 days ago. So I'm gonna comment that this reverts temporary workaround shipped with. Metro not starting properly in some cases, especially when we can't set this command. Launch package command. All right, so this is pretty much this is now gonna fail maybe or not. I need to check whether master itself is passing or not. But the idea is that this PR, when it's merged, it will ship with the config and it will make it possible to run, to also run RM tester with React Native Run iOS. To tell you why, you know, let's look at what happens when you run React Native Run iOS right now in a React Native project. So when I do run iOS, I have iOS project not found. This is not good, right? What I can do, I have two options. I can check the options and I can pass a flag project path RM tester. It's not like that. I can pass this custom flag, but this is, you know, it works, but we can do better. Like, I don't like passing flags around. It makes me like I never remember to pass them around. So what we can do, we can use the config. I do have this nice pull request open already, and we can check it out. Oh, somebody changed the base. So run iOS command has this project path flag. We just used it. However, what we can do here, we can make default instead of iOS to be a function that receives this config object. So what we do is we go to project property and then we go to iOS. So we do config.project.ios.sourcedir. So if our config mechanism was able to detect your app, use this command, use that value. Otherwise, just don't, because it's gonna be an error. And why this is great? This is great because, well, we already know where our tester is because the CLI config is already supporting that. And even if it wouldn't, you would be able to just go to React Native, config.js, to just go to this file inside React Native that I created. Go to here and just do it like this. Just in case we didn't detect it, just do the path here. So it's really great because it allows us to make simple interactions like that work. You don't have to worry about that. So I'm really excited in the direction that the CLI is going, and I'm hoping that it will make those tiny things like this one possible, because using CLI should be a smooth experience. I often hear that why React Native CLI is not as nice as Flutter CLI and stuff like that. I think we can do it as nice, even better. And with the latest features that we have shipped and we have in plans, I'm like so excited because I know this will happen. And my personal goal, is to make React Native tools to be as great as possible, to be as fast as possible, and for your experience with third-party software and modules to be as smooth as possible. So that's where we at. I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about. Thank you for staying with me till the end of this stream. It was the first one in my life, and actually one of the very few first times when I was talking about something without a scenario or without a practicing that before. And I was planning to talk for 20 minutes. I talked for almost 2 hours. So that's great on the other hand, which because we had a lot of content to cover, and I also feel like there's much more to do, and I feel like we should do more live streaming from around that topic too. So thanks again for staying with us, with me, with the RNCLI team. I'm really grateful for that. And if you have any other follow-ups or something that you would like me to ask again, feel free to ask me on Twitter. And subscribe to this channel, to my channel. I'm now the real YouTuber. You can subscribe to my channel. I'll be posting those live streams more, and also try to post some videos working with React Native, and maybe some Q&As and stuff like that. So thanks again for staying with me, and I wish you a pleasant weekend. I think for US it's just starting. For Europe, that's like end of the Saturday, which is the day, right? So we should probably go and do something. I'm gonna go and grab probably a beer and chill for a bit, because that was pretty tiring. So thank you again for staying with me, and see you around the community work. Bye bye.